Located on 225 acres in Garden City, Long Island, Nassau Community College, a member of the State University of New York system, has close to 20,000 students attend the school each year. The college mascot is Leo the Lion, and these are his stories of the school's absolute best and brightest who have graduated over the past 50 plus years. So let's catch up together as the Alumni Association of Nassau Community College proudly presents Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Welcome to Lion Tales. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and I am a director on the board of the Alumni Association at Nassau Community College and a proud graduate. I am here to celebrate the successes of our alum, and together we will share stories that will uplift, inspire, and often amuse you. Each week, I will introduce you to the alumni of Nassau Community College interested in sharing their experiences while attending the college and the secrets to their success. Look for many new and exciting events on the Alumni Association's social media pages and share any exciting news with us on Facebook, Instagram, or on our webpage at ncc.edu/alumni. Or find me on Twitter at Dr. Lynnda Nadien. Did you know Leo the Lion is the mascot for Nassau Community College? Lions are ruled by Leo and fire. The male lions represent pride while the female stands for teamwork. Together, we are Lion Tales. Today, I would like to welcome to Lion Tales our guest, Matthew Parker, class of 2016. Matthew Parker is a Hudson Valley singer-songwriter, otherwise known as Mattelight. He is a multi-instrumentalist and singer-songwriter with a deep appreciation of his craft. Known not only for his memorable hooks, but for his keen ear for crafting melodies. His lyrics and melodies possess an evolving sense of humor. His Greatest Hits album dropped on April 13, 2023, and showcases his different styles of music. Welcome to Lion Tales, Matthew Parker, class of 2016.
Thank you, Lynnda. I'm very happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. So tell us about some of your first experiences being on the campus of Nassau Community College.
Absolutely. Oh, man, I remember it like it was yesterday. When I first got here, I was immediately struck by the music program because I came here immediately to study music, and the close knit atmosphere and the teachers was something that struck me, as well as the students who had obviously come from all over and had different stories, but we were all here. It was immediately. It was immediately, I guess, prevalent that this was a community. Yeah. Did you have to audition to become part of the music program, or you went right into a liberal arts degree? I did audition. I did, I guess placement tests. Yeah. So they could see, how good is he at his sight reading? How good is he at that? Yeah. And did you have to play piano for that? I did. They asked me in that moment if I wanted to study piano or guitar, and at that moment, I was kind of well, piano's the one I know the least of. Yeah. So maybe I'm going to pick piano so I can get better at that. Yeah. Because I think, learning piano is really just something that's really, it's a great skill to have. Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't really matter what age, because even if you're very little and you start studying, but even if you're an adult and you start studying, it really is something that keeps the brain working, and it really is such a great skill to have. Absolutely. So your main instrument, you're multi-instrumentalist, but you are mainly guitar? Yeah, I think guitar used to be, and then after coming here, I'm now my piano is way above where my guitar is. Oh, that's great. Yeah, so I would say piano. So now you're coming out of high school. You were coming from Chaminade, you said? I was actually coming from SUNY Geneseo. Okay, SUNY Geneseo, and then you made your way back down to Nassau. Exactly, yeah. And so when you graduated from high school, you went to Geneseo. Went to Geneseo to study engineering and physics. Yeah. Which I loved. I was good at it in high school. Yeah. But yeah, when I went away, I think my priorities shifted, and I was a little more interested in having a good time. Yeah. And and so I ended up leaving because they very politely asked me to leave. And so I was like, where do I go now? And so I went back home. I grew up on Long Island, so
Yeah.
went back here and started studying at Nassau Community College, studying music this time. It's like, let me try my hand at something that I'm a little bit more, passionate about.
Yeah. How did you know, when did you start to realize that you had musical ability? How old were you, and what was the early years like?
The early years, yes. I think it was probably, I played guitar a little bit when I was like 13, but when I got my first, it was a MacBook laptop that had this program called GarageBand.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any listeners who know fool around with GarageBand or like Logic, like when you're first discovering this thing, it's absolutely amazing, and you're dragging in drums and trying to overlay stuff. And I think that was where I first realized that like this is something that I can do and like make things sound good.
Yeah. And then you learn to kind of import the beats. And then when did you start sort of songwriting? Did you songwrite on paper?
That's funny. Yeah. Let's see. I have my first song I actually wrote in like 5th grade. It was called Her Goodbye. It was about this girl leaving me. And I don't even know what I wrote it about because I had yet to be broken up with. But it's like, this is something that people write songs about.
Yeah. That's what happens. You just write about love and, things that happen in your life.
Absolutely.
How do you write songs now? Do you keep things in a journal, or do you do everything on the computer or the phone?
I feel like if you ask songwriters this, I feel like everyone stutters over this answer because I think there's multiple ways that everyone writes a song. And there's also multiple ways that I write a song. There's the one where you're just really feeling something, so you just sit down with your guitar and you just sing whatever comes to your head. You record it and then, you fine-tune it. There's other ones that kind of start as poetry and like you write it down and then you workshop it and you bring it to the instrument. And then there's the ones where it starts with like the music and you just like have this melody stuck in your head and eventually you stumble on the words and get there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of poets become songwriters, and maybe songwriters are writing more poetic prose. They don't know if it would become a song or not. But I think there's ways to kind of like maybe just keep your journals written so you always have like something to look back on too. Yeah. Now, do you come up with the chords first sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah, I do. Sometimes I come up with the chords and then write a melody, which I've learned is like a little backwards way of doing it because I feel like oftentimes the most organic thing, I feel like it comes from the melody and then the chords support it. But sometimes, I don't know, I have like this theory brain, so I like also fooling around and like how can I make this weird? How can I make these, I don't know, how can I make these seemingly unrelated things relate to each other? And so that's actually probably the 4th way I create things is just like tinkering with theory and stuff. And like,
yeah. Now you do a lot of work with beats and, kind of layering music.
Yes.
And can you explain a little bit about, your approach to that? Because do you do sort of like minor chords, or do you want it to be a little more eclectic than a typical like, C scale type of progression?
Yeah, I love the old C scale.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it. It just brings me such joy. But I think oftentimes I am searching for something, like looking for more like complexities and nuance in the music, or just like searching for feelings, or like what is this, what is this, how can I evoke a certain feeling? And the layering, as far as like the layering and the beats go, that's, it's really fascinating to get to do that firsthand. Because in these programs, when you're recording stuff, you can add as many tracks as you want, and you plug in your guitar, you play the guitar track. Maybe you have a little metronome in your ear and you're playing along to it. And then you can take as much time as you want to listen back to that and add things in at certain points where it just enhances the track. And so it's like, I always call it the skeleton track because it's kind of the thing that holds everything together.
Right, yeah.
And then just ornamenting around that. It's probably one of the most fun things I do in my life.
Yeah. It's interesting how, I know I was watching something about how they're doing a lot of songwriting in Nashville, for example. And, there's a lot of writers, like multiple writers, like maybe 8 or 9 of them. And everyone's kind of throwing in a line and maybe throwing in a beat. I don't know if if that might make it even more difficult or if that makes it, not as difficult. But it's sort of like, say this line. And then this guy does that line. It seems like kind of an unusual way to approach it, but they seem to be having success with it.
I have done actually it's so funny you say that. Probably my most successful songs have been like co-written like that. It's been a group of like 4 of us, some not even songwriters, but us just kind of like throwing out stuff and like trying to craft this thing together. And the two that come to mind, the first one is Tony Hawk, which is sort of like, this song about playing that classic Tony Hawk Pro Skater game with all your buddies. And it's in the style of like the soundtrack of the game. And I remember making that. We were just playing and someone shouted out, I think it was my friend Josh, he's like, this sounds exactly like Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And we all just got together and just started throwing out lines and eventually, like, boom, it was created.
You are listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and our guest today is Matthew Parker, class of 2016. So we were talking about, coming up with Tony Hawk and how it's an extremely catchy tune. And, again, you're saying that in a group, someone shouted it out and it became like, a staple for the song. So how did you decide to put that down, lay that track down?
I think it started with, it's like back to that skeleton track. I recorded, it was me and my friend Jared, who I've done a lot of my recordings with. Jared Nelson, also fantastic, like artist, musician. You can find his stuff everywhere too. He's a fantastic drummer, one of the coolest drummers I've ever met. And we played together. He played the drums. I just was chugging along on my guitar and we just laid it down. After we had kind of spent the time writing the song, we had an idea of the form, and then we just gradually filled it in. It was, and by the end of the night, it was done. I played bass, played some organ on top of it. Josh and Jared both were singing, backup vocals. And then I think it was the final piece. We just needed that trombone, like that classic ska kind of feel.
Yeah.
And so we called up our friend Ryan Perrone of the band What? And he came in that night and it was done in that night. It was just like, sometimes it works really well when you're just in that flow. You just got to get it done.
And you just got to get it done. You can't let it sit to the side. So when you decided to pursue music, now you were coming out of possibly doing, engineering, but then when that really wasn't, how did you know that you were going to say, I got to pursue my music?
Yeah, that was a pivotal moment because, I was not doing well in my engineering classes or my physics classes. So if that didn't tell me anything, it was the fact that I looked at myself and I was like, so I'm struggling in these classes, I'm not going, but what have I been doing all this time? And the truth is that I was spending a lot of time with my guitar, a lot of time at the piano in my dorm room, just like in the middle of the night, just like crafting little melodies and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I said, why don't I try the thing that like I like spending my time doing the most? And so when it came time to come back to Nassau Community College, I think it made sense to study music.
Yeah. And do you feel that it's something that we don't want people to kind of say to us, oh no, it's so hard to make a living at this, don't do it. But you knew deep down that you really wanted to do it, and you are doing it now. And do you feel that it's the struggle is going to be worth it at some point?
I do. I think you have to hold that. You have to hold that faith high.
Definitely.
There's times I think where everyone has a little bit of doubt in making it work. But I think if your love for doing something is enough, then it's like that's what holds you to do it. That's what keeps you on that path. It's just like, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And so I have held out hope, and I have a lot of hope. I mean, I'm relatively unknown right now,
right.
except by, a few small select group of wonderful people who have heard my music. But I think I still have that faith, of making it, quote unquote.
Yeah. And I think that, to me, it's sort of like making it would mean that you have the luxury of doing even behind the scenes, and that you're making a living so that you can continue to make your music, and also that you can share it with the public. And, even if you weren't making millions and millions of dollars, which of course would be, great for all musicians to be able to have that luxury, but at least that you kind of stick to your art.
Exactly.
That's a big thing about, not to art compromise. You don't want to compromise your art for the sake of kind of selling it out. And so how do you balance the work and play aspect now?
That's a really good question. I think when it comes to the music itself, I don't feel like I've had to compromise anything. Even like my silliest, most catchy stuff has still been like, this is still like a part of me. Mm-hmm. The part I see that me compromising the most has to do with the current like independent music market.
Yeah.
With regard to like promoting oneself. You don't have a record company backing you. So you're like literally selling yourself and selling your craft. And I think that's probably the aspect that feels the least genuine sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, people aren't going to listen to this if I don't, make a post about it or something like that. And I think you got to, like, I've had to come to terms with that it's something that's necessary, but also realize that there is no like one correct way to do this, and to like I still want to be my same self. I want to be genuine throughout the whole process, which has been an interesting thing to kind of explore within myself and ask myself, like who am I and who am I, like who is this music and why am I putting it out? And I think that it's just the most important thing to me is that is the art, is the music, is the thing that brought me here in the first place, to keep that in my sight.
Yeah.
And that's what's been kind of keeping me going through.
And, in society, I guess nostalgia is like kind of what people rely on, but you also have an aesthetic to your music. There's the element of irony when you're writing a song, and
certainly is.
The ska. People have to understand that there's like an element of there's an approach to it that you have. And how would you explain that to people so that they can kind of get turned on to, taking things, I guess, not as seriously.
Right.
But at the same time, there's such a creative element about it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't even know. It's like, I don't want to have to explain it to people. It's like, if you get it, you get it. But I think, I don't know, there's just moments, I think, in the song. It's like you could think that I'm being completely, genuine and very serious and sincere about what I'm saying, but I feel like there's always just some aspect of it that like lets you on that like, oh, this is riffing on something, or he's making a comment about this. I don't know. It's like, I don't even know if I necessarily need people to understand that it's irony in a way. Like, as long as you're enjoying the music itself, then like, I respect that, and I love that it's like you can enjoy it on an entirely different level than it was meant to. Which, I mean, some people might say like, yeah, but like they're not getting it. And like, like, that's fine, Yeah.
And it's hard, I think, for there's so many different, I guess, genres of music, but even with like, free jazz or something like that, it can be very heavy. Mm-hmm. And some people like the standard jazz, and that they're not going to, they're not going to shy away from any of that, because the free jazz can be very wild and more out there because it's kind of your, it's improv.
Yeah.
And so anything you do with like riffs or beats is really like, it is kind of improvisational because you're coming up with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I think it's hard to kind of, even make people understand, I guess, classical music because maybe they're not used to listening to it and they might not be as turned on to it as well, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a great point because I was never too much into classical music until I started studying it, which makes me think like context. I mean, back to that earlier point you made about like understanding the irony of my music.
Mm-hmm.
Context is important. And I think when I understood like who these songs were made by, understood more about the composer and the time that they're from, it certainly made me appreciate classical music more. Which actually, now I'm thinking maybe I should be, trying to push, hey guys, this is actually what I mean. I don't know, how do I do that?
It's hard to make people, I know, you know what it is? It has to come with like a level of exposure when people hear it and then you wonder what they're really thinking, what they're coming away with. I think that's like a cool thing because, nostalgia is kind of like related to social media in a way, and people are not really sure of like a premise of your artistic viewpoint.
I think I should put together like a test group or something. Yeah. Just a bunch of strangers, I'll go in with a clipboard.
Well, they used to do that when they would do, if you dropped an album, they would do like a listening party. Right. And then you would kind of react to the way people were reacting to the album, which I think is kind of cool. We don't do enough of that. I think we should do more listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're coming up with, something that's really unique that's coming out for the first time. Like you dropped the album, you said April 13th. Mm-hmm. So what were your goals in that?
It was I feel like the goals. It's interesting. The goals after the goal became like after the fact, because these were I was just trying to record these songs and we were coming up with them like on the spot, and we were making a bunch of just very different sounding songs, some completely genuine, some just like very funny, complete jokes. And once we compiled them into like a list of 12 songs and like listened through it, it just became very clear that like this feels like a greatest hits record.
Yeah.
And so I think that title in a way was attached after the fact, where it was like, cool, like this project just feels like an amalgamation of everyone, like your entire discography just, I forget the word, but someone just used this word the other day, distilled.
Oh, distilled.
It's been distilled into this like very fine, acute like list of completely different music. And I think it was just a way to represent that time that I was in with my friends.
You are listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and our guest today is Matthew Parker, class of 2016. Now, I want to ask you, too, what inspires you? Who've been really your biggest musical influences or comedy influences?
I would have to say, started with the Beatles, certainly.
Of course.
It always does.
As someone who has named their son after Paul, yes.
So you understand very well.
You can't help it.
No, you can't. And
they ask Paul all about how he's writing a song, and, he always has his guitar, but, he really cannot, up until now, he's 80 years old, and he still really can't explain it, which I think it's good because maybe there really is no explanation. It just flows through, Things flow through writers. That's just what happens.
Certainly. The natural ones, I think, feel the best, the ones that flow out of you.
Yeah. You don't even know where it comes from. It's like scent. So the Beatles.
Well, we want answers, Paul. Give us answers.
Yeah, Paul. They should ask him better questions now. Because I think that the creativity and the artistry will, obviously that's going to go down in history.
Yeah.
So the Beatles are an influence for you, and
the Beatles, and then it became. I'm just going to list off a bunch, I guess. Then the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Animal Collective. Beach House. More recently, this fantastic harpist and songwriter Joanna Newsom.
Oh yeah.
And then who have I gotten into more recently? I really have a deep admiration for Randy Newman.
Oh, I just heard Short People on the way in. Yeah.
Which has been like realizing that he has this entire catalog of just these like amazing songs, and that he's not just the Toy Story guy.
That's true. That's true. He's really an incredible songwriter, but also a composer, and with the element of humor.
He's got it.
And
he's got.
What about Weird Al?
Weird Al. I mean, he was big when I was growing up. Yeah. And certainly. Yeah, as far as the comedy goes, definitely Weird Al in the aspect of like, you can make a song anything. You can just I can string together a bunch of silly stuff, and it's fun, and it's almost like practicing.
Yeah.
A lot of people also mention when they hear my music, like Bo Burnham, who has he's like a huge YouTube star, and I think they see the element of humor in there and compare me to him pretty often.
Yeah, and that's it's important because those are kind of the influences, but at the same time, you there's an originality about your own music, which is really cool. And most people don't really. It's not. Yours seems to be that original quality is significant to what you're trying to project.
I think so. It's like I have to. I don't know. People try to emulate certain artists, but I feel like I just love these artists. And then when I make my own thing, like that, it just comes through.
Yeah.
Like with Paul, how his songs come through. It's like it's inevitable. It's just I consumed this so much, so it's now like a part of me.
I would like to thank our guest, Matthew Parker, class of 2016. How can our listeners contact you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Mattelight. That's Matte, light, like a light bulb. And I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify, Bandcamp. You could probably find my MySpace if you really tried. But please.
Yeah, Bandcamp is a good one too.
Bandcamp is good. You can buy my album.
Yeah, that's true. They can support the album. That would be amazing. Thank you for being here today, Matthew Parker. I would like to thank you for being our guest. My name is Dr. Lynnda Nadien, and I serve as a director on the board of the Nassau Community College Alumni Association, and I am a proud alum. Lion Tales is available as a podcast on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. More information is online at nccradio.org. Thanks for listening to Lion Tales on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.